This is Frank Fantini. We are here with Martin Storm, who's the founder and CEO of BMM Testing Labs. And Martin, before we talk about specific issues, tell us a little bit about the Martin Storm story and the BMM Testing Labs story.
Thank you, Frank. BMM's been the longest serving independent gaming lab in the world, having started in 1981. And it has been testing gaming systems and various gambling devices since that time. I got involved with BMM in 2002 and bought the company in 2005. So from 2005 over the last 10 years, I've been hell-bent on expanding the business. So in that period of time, we've grown the business from a small gaming lab in Australia, and we've opened up in various international markets. So we're in South Africa, we have Spain, Italy and Austria running in Europe. We have Macau and Singapore in Asia. We have Peru and Mexico and Argentina. We have Canada and we have Las Vegas. In the process of buying the company, I restructured the ownership and moved the parent company to the United States. So we've been an American company since 2005. So BMM competes for testing services, for both quality assurance testing and also for compliance testing. And that's a marketplace you understand, of course.
Yeah, and I just learned something. I said you're the founder, but you were the person who purchased the company.
That's okay.
We talked earlier today with James Maida, your rival from GLI, and he's obviously very proud of what that company has accomplished over the years. And it's obviously the dominant company in the industry, even though you've been making strides in market share. How do you compete against a much larger company like that? That's
a good question. I mean, obviously, it's really segment-based. So if you look at BMM, in Australia, for instance, we have nearly 70% market share of what is one of the most mature and advanced gaming markets in the world. If you look at South Africa, we have more than 50% market share. And if you go from market to market, you'll find that BMM and GLI share market share pretty evenly. Where the discrepancy has occurred has been in the United States. And fundamentally, that's because in this market, you have 290 gaming jurisdictions, and BMM started with 0 gaming jurisdictions here. And until we can actually achieve all of those 290 gaming jurisdictions, we can't test for 80 to 85% of the market. So when you say what market share we might have, for the 20% that we compete for, we have more than half of that. But for the other 80% we don't compete for. So that's really held us back. But we're only 15 jurisdictions away from completion. We've spent 12 years and $10 million getting to that point. I'm excited by how we get there. And the way we compete with them is pretty straightforward. When you're the challenger brand, you have to do things better. So we focus on providing better value for what we do. We've got quality improvements, we've got cost improvements, we've got velocity improvements, which is getting product to market faster, and we've got service improvements. And I think even the competition we've provided in the United States for the 20% that we compete for has improved GLI immeasurably in the market. The GLI that operates today is a far better GLI than it was when we came here back in 2002 to 2005. Now, we've got some great metrics around those improvements. I think the marketplace is voting with their feet. I think you'll find major manufacturers already shifting to BMM. I think our announcement in Moncton this week of adding 1,000 jobs supported by the New Brunswick government is a testament to where we think we're going to go in the next 5 years. So we expect to be the biggest gaming lab in the world in 5 years' time. So if you want to know how we compete, that's it. That is a good thing to put down in our notes for our teaser calendar for 5 years from now. Yeah, exactly. You should. Okay. The gaming industry is changing so fast, and every day seems to have changed faster than the day before. We have disruptive sort of games that people did not even envision a few years ago. We got exchange wagering. We have daily fantasy sports in the United States, which is or is not gaming, depending on a lot of views, legal and political. We've got, even in fantasy sports, esports, which has come up even more recently than that. We've got convergence of technologies. We've got mergers of companies. We've got globalization. How do you address all of that change? It happens at multiple levels. Firstly, the technology that's driving the convergence has existed since the late 80s and early 90s. It's not new technology. It's just new to the gaming industry. the gaming industry has been 10 to 15 years behind the rest of the market, the commercial market for technology. So things that we were testing in the early 1990s in the commercial market are being tested today in the gaming market. It's nothing particularly innovative. So convergence is not really the challenge. All we're really talking about here is content being distributed largely on different types of platforms, distribution channels, and that technology is not particularly advanced either. So we've moved from a very homogeneous slot machine environment where everybody built their own hardware, they built their own software, they even built their own components, and now we've moved to a heterogeneous environment where you can buy all of those bits off the shelf. So what's unique, I think, about the gaming industry is content and the kind of wagering that occurs. So from the convergence point of view, we're comfortable. We've been doing iGaming systems since the late 1990s. We dominated that space before the American government shut all that down. So we're comfortable about the technology. In terms of the different types of wagering there is today, clearly it's up to regulators to work their way through what they're willing to allow to occur in the marketplace. So we speak to regulators, we advise regulators, we train regulators and educate regulators, much the same way GLI does. None of that's changed. We do that all around the world. GLI does that all around the world. I think what GLI does particularly well is they run their roundtable, and that roundtable has attracted a lot of people, particularly regulators over the years, and that's another forum in which they get education. But we do a lot of that one-on-one. So I think that we really require regulators to decide what they want to do with a lot of these betting and wagering type models. And from a test point of view, which is what our specialty is, BMM wants to be the best testing company in the world. Everything we do is really focused and geared towards being the best test company. There's a lot of things in the industry like professional and consulting services. We do them, but that's not our core business. Our core business is being the best test lab. And that's where we speak to manufacturers, they get to see us and they get to compare us to GLI and other labs, and then they make the decision.
One of the buzzwords this year is skill-based gaming. Be interested in what your take is on it, and whether it's the kind of thing that regulators ever can always be up to speed on or comfortable with.
That's a good question. It's very early days, and we've just had some progress in Nevada, and we'll have to see how that evolves. I think regulators have a very difficult job, and whether they'll ever feel comfortable with it, I think it requires them to really understand technology and understand what's happening in a marketplace. And we've got regulators today here in the United States and around the world who aren't being funded by government. They're completely underfunded. They're not getting the kind of education they need. They're not being able to keep up with what's going on. So if you were a little bit anxious as a regulator, I would understand. If you've got 3 people trying to do the job of 13 people, it's going to be pretty tough. In terms of how we operate, we understand what skill-based gaming is, and we can speak to regulators about what it means and what it means to them and how their standards might look. BMM wrote the first set of gaming standards ever in the world in 1992. Those same standards you see today in another format here in the United States. Whether you test to a GLI standard or a Nevada standard or anyone else's standard, doesn't make any difference to us. In the end, our job is to provide a certifiable product. So whether regulators will understand the impact on their standards of skill-based gaming, whether they can keep up with it, whether they feel comfortable, and then there's a political issue as well. Right. Will politicians be comfortable, and will the public be comfortable with skill-based gaming? The millennials that we talk about a lot are one of the most interesting groups in the marketplace, and I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about them as well. So skill-based, whether that'll attract millennials, we'll see what happens as time goes by.
I personally am somewhat skeptical, because I look at the games that young people play, and they're so far beyond what I think regulators might be comfortable with. But as you say, we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, well, if depending on how much time you have left, I'd offer you this. A lot of people think that the reason why millennials are not playing games is because they're not engaging enough. You might argue that maybe the economics is what's driving it. The aggregate hold rate in 1995 was 5.9% by casinos. Today it's 7.7%, which means players are sharing less in the outcomes. If you look at the speed of a game, technology, from 2004 to 2014, it increased from 8 times a spin in a minute to 14 to 17 times a spin. So not only are you sharing less in the win, you're losing your money faster than ever before. I think today's millennials are really bright. I know my son is. And he doesn't want to play slot machines because he doesn't want to lose his money that quickly. Right. He wants to do something more engaging and hang on to his money.
Right, and I think we actually see the slot machine industry right now with a little conflict with casinos over that issue.
Yeah.
Final question.
Sure.
You have a unique perspective on the industry because you get to see as a disinterested third party the entire industry, at least from the technology side. If you were to look into your crystal ball, what would the gaming industry look like 3 or 5 years from now?
It's a very good question. I think manufacturers will still be selling slot machines, and that the business will be driven by their ability to sell slot machines, replace content on slot machines, to share revenue with casinos. You just had Jamie Odell in. I mean, there's a great CEO who has understood what his core business is, which is the creation of content, and then he's purchased one of the best businesses in the market to share a little bit of the business going forward with his customers through VGT. I think that's where the business is going to be in 3 to 5 years. I don't think we're going to see a significant iGaming presence in the United States. I think that looks kind of stillborn already. And I think that the new convergence of technology is not such a big issue. I think you might look at social gaming as something that will emerge and see where that goes. And I think sports betting and all the variations, fantasy sports, they're all the things that may start to show a little blip on the radar in the next 2 or 3 or 4 years within our industry. It's still fundamentally about content, slot machines, and selling those.
Okay, Martin, very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Frank.